I really felt that a lot of people uh, that I was treated pretty well in general, um, especially the universities where I went to school. And then later on, I started I worked at Central Institute for the Deaf after I graduated, got a bachelor's degree in St. Louis. I do feel, and I did feel, that because I was a conscientious objector, I had to make sure that I had to do worthwhile things for the rest of my life, and I had to do and not participate in any kind of war work. So I first went to work for Central Institute for the Deaf, which was useful work. And then I did come, and then I came to Wisconsin here, and I taught for a while in electrical engineering. And then I worked in the medical school in medical electronics for more than 30 years. So I was careful. I tried to be consistent and do work that was morally useful, proper.
How did you then continue to become continually involved with the Society of Friends?
I met my wife to be at the Quaker War Camp,
Mm-hmm.
and she was Quaker. So we didn't get married until after the war, like 3 years or later, I guess. But then we did get married, and she attended the Quaker meeting here religiously, but I once in a while did. I never did actually belong to the Society of Friends. She did. I was what they call a friend of friends,
Mm-hmm.
and I still am.
What was she doing at the work camp?
It was a volunteer thing for young people. These American Friends Service Committee work camps. People working, doing useful things, doing things that needed to be done, and both men and women were there. And she was one. She was a graduate student in zoology at the time, but she had a free summer, so she just went out to the work camp, and that's where I met her.
This was in Indianapolis,
in Indianapolis,
okay.
Yeah.
So the camp in Indianapolis then was male and female, but the other camps that you worked on were not.
The director had his wife there. They both helped to run the camp, and then there was a woman dietitian. And that was it. I think then the rest was all men.
Mm-hmm. So how did you come to Madison?
From Illinois, when I graduated Illinois, I got this job in St. Louis at the Central Institute for the Deaf, and I was there for about 4 years. And I also got a master's degree, worked for a master's degree at Washington University while I was there. And then after that, in Chicago, when I was going to Illinois Tech, I worked for Joe Hind at the University of Chicago, built electronic equipment for him while he did research in hearing. And then he went down to, I went to Central Institute for the Deaf, and he went down there afterward because I told him about it, and he thought it would be a good thing for him to do, I guess. And then after a few years, he went to the University of Wisconsin in the neurophysiology department. He told me about that and called me up there. So I went. I applied on my own to the Department of Electrical Engineering and I worked as an instructor there. But I also worked for him in neurophysiology in the summertime.
Mm-hmm.
That was how it went. And then after a couple of years in electrical engineering, I moved over to the medical school full time.
Did you find that Madison was more receptive to a lot of your views, and you found more people who were sympathetic to your views here than you had elsewhere?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. In Chicago, I was almost afraid to tell people what my beliefs were, because I don't know if it was really justified, but that's the way I felt. Felt I'd just get into a big argument with somebody. But in Madison, I was almost proud to tell them about how I felt, because they probably felt the same way. Yeah, things are different in Madison.
What was your reaction when you heard that the war was over?
Well, I was certainly happy. Um, I don't know. I was happy for a lot of reasons. The fact that the killing was over, but personally, I was happy that I could go back and do what I had been doing. Some preparing myself for life, going to school. But the war was such a and my experience was such a different thing that it was like an entirely different life. And when I went into work camp, and when I was waiting to be a CO, I just completely divorced myself from my previous life, because I didn't know if I ever would get back to it. And then after the war, I realized I had nothing else to do but get back to it. So that's what I did.
What did you think that when you say you didn't know whether you'd be getting back to what you had been doing previously? What would you have thought might have happened?
At the beginning, I figured I'd probably end up in jail. And then once you're in jail, you don't know what'll happen to you. Mm-hmm. A lot of bad things happen to people in jail. I knew some people who were in jail, and they had trouble. In fact, my wife's brother, a Quaker, who was an absolutist, who did not believe in registering even, went to jail 3 times. He went to jail, got out, and then he still refused to register, and they put him in jail again. And he ended up with all kinds of problems, mental and otherwise. He couldn't adjust to society after that. And there were a number of other people too. Most of them I didn't know personally. So I realized that was a possibility.
When you heard about the way that the war had ended, when you heard about the bomb,
the bomb.
How did that temper any enthusiasm you had for the war's finish?
Well, I think in a way, it was really just more proof that I was right. It was a good thing that it ended, because I felt that if it had gone on much more, we would have blown up the whole world. So I mean, it all seemed consistent with my belief that wars were just impossible. It was not possible to get into them anymore. Not a real war. Fortunately, they managed to avoid an atomic war. So far, anyway.
Do you think that legacy, that the sort of the start of the nuclear age, was worth ending the war in that way?
Oh, I didn't believe in that. I didn't think that was right. If necessary, if I thought they could have dropped a bomb on an uninhabited island or something like that, to demonstrate its power. No, I think that was the logical extreme of result of bigger bombs and more war, and it was wrong. It was the ultimate.
Was there talk among yourself and the other conscientious objectors in Connecticut about alternatives? Did you realize what the use of this bomb meant? And could you see ramifications already at that time?
I when I was in civilian public service, I did not pay much attention to the war. It was a completely separate thing for me. I don't know. I'm not sure if other people felt that way or not, but that's kind of the way I felt. That I can't do anything about it. I thought in a way, I felt these crazy people were just killing each other, and I just have to wait until I stop. And so I didn't really follow it much.
Was it easy for you not to follow the war?
Well, I guess. 'Cause, I mean, I didn't have to be that way, but I think that's the way it was. I was just isolated. I was kind of like in jail in a way. It was something else what the world was doing, and I didn't have any part of it.
Was there any thought in your mind in terms of winning the war one way or the other? In terms of who would win the war, the potential ramifications of the Germans winning, or
Well, I certainly was glad to see that Hitler was gone at the end of the war, and Nazism. That's certainly true. But I didn't feel that the United States was in the war because it was a noble cause or anything special like that. And I never was taught that the World War was like that, and I didn't see why this war was any different from the other ones.
Mm-hmm. What was the atmosphere like in your home? How did you what was the you were born 3 years after the First World War ended? How was that taught to you?
My parents were immigrants. My father came from Russia. Probably he came to avoid conscription over there. I don't know when, 1910 or something like that. Mm-hmm. And they were poor, pretty ignorant people. My father could read, my mother couldn't. So they didn't really know much about what was going on. What I learned in school, and from my friends, from my high school friends, and I learned that wars were wrong. Just from my reading and from my friends, and I couldn't very well. I think my father probably was kind of sympathetic with me. My father and mother separated when I was around 16. Although I did go to see him, and we were friendly. I don't think we talked about that much. So, no. I remember that we did.
Do you think there was more of this type of teaching or anti-war teaching in the Jewish community than in most sort of non-pacifist church communities because of the tradition of socialism or communism? And
I think there was a lot of it in our particular community. Yeah. I didn't actually take it myself, but there was a Jewish newspaper, The Forward. I don't know if you've heard of that. And my guess is that was probably anti-war, at least up until the Second World War. Then I'm sure they changed. But before that, I bet they were socialist and anti-war. Mm-hmm. But I can't really speak with authority on that. I don't know personally. That was my thing.
The Forward was printed in Chicago?
Yeah, it was.
Was it in Yiddish in Chicago as well?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Because I know it was in New York, and they also printed a Philadelphia edition.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and I did know some people whose parents worked for the Forward. So I think that's the group that I was in. Are you Jewish by any chance? Mm-hmm. I kind of thought you might be.
Was Yiddish used in your home at all? Or?
Yeah, yeah. Especially my mother, although they could speak English.
When you think back now to the war years and to your experiences, what are the things that stick with you? The images, the feelings that you relate to your time during the war?
I'm not.
Just if there's anything sort of overriding about the war that you think of, if someone sort of says to you or brings up the war, if there's anything that you think of in particular.
I think it had aspects of the most most terrible things about war. The way we destroyed Japan, we came too close to destroying Japan with the atom bombs. The way we destroyed cities in Germany with firestorms. I read about that. So I still feel just the way I did before as far as wars are concerned. Incidentally, there are other things about why I felt the way I did, why I became a pacifist. I didn't feel that the United States was anything special. There were plenty of anti-Semites in the United States, for one thing, but there was also plenty of prejudice in the United States on the part of Jews, for example, as well as non-Jews. So I didn't think it was a especially good war. I really felt it was more like all wars. Since that time, I don't know. As I've grown older, as things have happened, I really feel more and more that what I did was right. And I think that people are coming to think that is the right attitude. That wars are wrong. You can't have them. You have to have some international organization to solve these problems. So I feel pretty good about what I've done and what I don't know if that's answering your.
Yeah.
Again.
No, that is.
Yes.
You mentioned just now anti-Semitism and the reactions to that. What sorts of things did you run into that made you particularly uncomfortable with the United States?
Anti-Semitism? It wasn't so bad for me personally. You mean as I grew up?
Mm-hmm. The things that made you feel alienated within the United States.
But my name is Ludwig. It must have been changed when my father came from Russia, changed by the immigration authorities, I suppose. And I guess I didn't really look particularly Jewish, though I lived in a Jewish neighborhood, which is now all black in Chicago. And I didn't really go to a Jewish high school because it was a technical school. But my friends did go to Marshall High School, which was a Jewish kind of socialist high school. A lot of my friends went to that school. We were aware of prejudice, and of course it's hard to tell whether you are or not. But I do remember things like this ship coming over from Europe, for example, with a load of Jewish refugees, which was turned away. And I can't say when I heard about that, but I remember some of that. I don't know if I heard about that before I actually went off to civilian public service, or maybe it was much later. I didn't, at that time. I don't think we heard about. Certainly not about death camps, concentration camps, and death camps. I think that stuff came out later. I'm not real sure about that. So we didn't really know how terrible Hitler was at that time. But we knew he was, of course, not good. But it was not something that was completely unique to Germany.
You suspect that the government knew?
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't trust my government then. I still don't.
Is there anything else that you had wanted to bring up that I hadn't gotten to?
I don't think of anything else. I don't know if you want any of this stuff on the record or not, but I wanted to ask you about how you feel about this stuff.
Oh, well, we can turn that off.